I know it's a recording, but that's so clean, it's ridiculous. So I don't like this kind of statement. I would say that in the things that she is good at, yeah, there are no matches. Like in terms of people who can execute on whistle anything, yeah, she's the best at that, hands down. But there are other techniques, and there are different ways of singing. There's different ways to approach singing. So saying that no equal in technique presumes that there's one way to sing, and then that's the benchmark, and that's the goal that everyone should go to. If singing were a giant competition and there were judges and it was winning or losing, then yeah, sure, one technique to own them all. But that's not the case. So we don't have to bring other people down to lift Mariah up. Mariah can stand really tall on her own. I will say though, her musicianship is ridiculously good and underappreciated. So yeah. Okay, I guess that's gonna be weaves through the most complex vocal lines with ease, demonstrating her superior breath capacity. I'm gonna be like a total like a super voice teacher, real quick. It's not her capacity to breathe; it is her posture and her ridiculous, just when you want to control your breath. You do so by having excellent posture and a lot of command over your torso, both inhale and exhale. And a lot of people, like, they want to, slice it up, like, with the intercostal muscles and then this and that. There are like 200 something muscles in the body, each one affecting the other. Focusing on one muscle versus the other is never the approach to getting good at it. You want to build a general athleticism, so like motions help and all that stuff. But what's crazy to me about Mariah is that the higher notes, which higher notes take less air, she doesn't ever lurch for a high note. She doesn't ever hesitate. It's just like boom, and she's there. Even on her off days, even on recordings where she's not on a good day, which every singer has, she still has the technique to kind of finagle around and find it in very little time. So it's not a matter of capacity. It's a matter of being able to control your inhale and exhale. Yeah. Though I will agree, her vocal lines can be silly hard. I love that this is like, there's been text before, right? Like they're explaining everything. It's like, this is that thing and this is that thing and this is why this is good. And then nothing is said here. They're like, yeah, no, nothing needs to be said. Just listen to this. It's important. And it is deranged that I am commenting on the different tones that she achieves through whistle. So there are people in the comments that always say, oh, it's whistle register, it's flagellute, or whatever German word. There's such a trend that is pretentious as can be in vocal education, which is calling one thing something else in a foreign language and thinking that establishes you as an expert. Flagellute or whistle, whatever you want to call it, changing the name from whistle register does not explain anything. Okay. And the people at the forefront of studying the human voice have yet to find a way to observe whistle, because the space in the larynx becomes so tiny that they can't get any equipment in there. No scopes, nothing. So we don't know what happens during whistle register. The only thing we know is the orientation of the vocal folds being similar to that of the lips when you, right? That's the only thing we know about whistle register. So when I talk about these different tone qualities, I want it to be very, very clear that I have no idea how she does it. There is no, anything I would say is completely presumptuous and arrogant and has no data backing it. These are just guesses at this point. Like, that's really round and lovely. It's like a flute. And then this little thing over here sounds like an oboe. Yeah. Oh, I missed that. Hold on. This. That has chutzpah. Like, again, I can't tell you how she does it. I have no clue. The power that has is crazy. Oh, that's super cool. It's interesting that she's so good live, because as a recording artist, she's also amazing. This is so cool. This is done often with flutes, pads, synthesizers to like kind of have over the top of a mix. That's so cool, because that's never done with a voice. Like, it's always like some sort of high string thing or a flute or a pad, and she's like, well, I can do that. That's a great idea. Let me just and like she'll just tune, like, she doesn't sound like that, right? She's just mastermind whatever her tuning knob of whistle destructionness, and she's just boop bap boop bap beep. That didn't age well. Also, and I know like this is all about whistle and stuff like that. The reason why I think this is particularly cool is that it's a brilliant arrangement. It's a brilliant arrangement. This is very consonant syllable heavy, because it's more like a rap in the spoken part. And so when you have it, when you're arranging, it's quite boring to have everything on the same beat for the same length. Like, a good drum part is not, with like, it's not that. It's like, right? Every different instrument occupies a different set of rhythms. And so these whistles that she's doing on top are very, very, very elegant long lines, in contrast to a lot of this like syllabic singing. There we go. That's so good. This is a fair point. Let me listen to it. It's funny because I actually don't think that's whistle. I don't know if that's whistle, or if that's whistle with like a thyroid tilt to add depth to it, or just a really clean mix. And the fact that I can't tell the difference just makes this point all the more impressive, right? So registers, everyone thinks of it as like chest, head, like, falsetto or mix or whatever, and then whistle. It's actually not that clean. It's not that, like, register happens on a continuum. There are mechanisms that are associated with higher range versus lower, but it is not as divided up as people think it is. It's funny, in the world of academia, they call falsetto the F word, because like, it exists, it's fine, but then everyone disagrees with it. I actually want to show you all a graph that's really, I think, makes this point better than I can say it. She is a doctorate in this, and in this field and topic. She's brilliant. And yeah, so this is how she maps out range and register. And this is actually similar to the Estel model. And so there are all these mechanisms that are listed in this graph. All of these mechanisms are options that you can use or combine in these different registers, and you can see that it's not chopped up like that. That's just not how the human voice works. So where I think Mariah has done an amazing job, if we just go back to her singing like a boss, is that you don't know that it's a transition. Because, like, if you're doing everything perfectly according to that graph, right? If you're just smooth, and it's smooth like butter, you should not hear the transitions. Like I said, I don't know if that's whistle or not. And it doesn't really matter if it is or not, because I think that just proves the point, right? I don't think that that's true. So this is the point I was trying to make. That's not how registers work, but obviously this is insane. And I don't think I can make it without you. Like, this is so preposterous. So again, there's not, like, you can't organize registers. It might help you to think of them that way, but it doesn't really hold up as a explanation of what physically actually happens in the larynx with the folds. To me, though, that makes this more impressive, because even if a singer could do this, all of that stuff, it's hold on, I want to hear it again because it's so ridiculous. And I don't think I can make it without you. What to me, what's crazy about Mariah, she can do that like 8 different ways. She's so comfortable in everything she does. It's ridiculous what she can do, and the variety. It's ridiculous. This is very true. I think, like, objectively, she is the person who has established the highest bar when it comes to whistle register. A lot of people like to throw around hyperbole. I think this is actually just true, in terms of the versatility that she has in whistle. And again, I just want to triple underline, no one knows how this works. They might think they do, they might be guessing, but no one knows how whistle works. I don't care how many Dunning-Kruger comments are on this video. No scientist, no academic, anybody has ever scoped the larynx during whistle. It's so tiny, instruments cannot fit in the larynx during this phonation. So it is crazy enough that singers are ahead, and we can expect the doers to be ahead of the people who trying to understand, right? We can always expect people doing to be further along than an academic in terms of actual singing. So, but what surprises me is not just that she can articulate words and whistle. I love you and did all that I could. That's so difficult for a few different reasons. So, it's funny, in certain parts of the video, I'm like, that's hyperbole. In this video, in this part of the video, I actually think this is understating what's happening here. So what's happening here is she's in whistle register, which is one thing, right? You hear how the vibrato kicks in there? That's a different thing. So as whistle is happening, when vibrato happens in the voice, it's tilting the thyroid cartilage, okay? She has it untilted in the beginning of this whistle. That little vibrato is the thyroid cartilage. Now, the reason why vowels and articulations like, just vowels and articulators during whistle is so preposterous is because as you ascend, your vowels must adjust, which is to say that the vocal tract must adjust based on what pitch you're on, based on, I guess, register, right? And that's hard enough. Vowel modification, as well as some other techniques, are hard enough. So, but the fact that she can do E, A, A, O, U, different consonants, etc., that's ridiculous. That's insanity. In most cases, when you get opera training, when you're in the super zenith of your top range, right? Traditional thinking, even in opera, is that you can use whatever vowel just gets you up there. Don't worry about the words. And it's mind-boggling that she can do that. It's not normal. Whether it's mic technique or control, I don't care. It is nutty that she has this much dynamic control. Now, I mean, actually, there was applause, right? So actually, that might be live, which is even scarier. One of the things that I do find interesting about whenever I listen to Mariah's whistles, they're never the same tone. And I'm not sure if that's because whistle is inherently inconsistent. I don't think that is, though. I don't think that's the case, because I just, there's not one way Mariah whistles. You know what I mean? It's like there's a whole palette of colors in whistle that she has, and yeah, I don't know how she does it. It just brings me joy. How is someone this good at a thing? It's ridiculous. I'm going to have an issue with the word manipulation because I'm a stuck-up, anal retentive, voice teacher academic wannabe. So that can be done, adding brightness can be done in several ways. And I think she doesn't do it just one way. You can add a contraction of the area epiglottic sphincter, which kind of makes it incredibly brassy. You can change the vowels to make it bright. There's a lot of things you can do. You can add nasality. And by the way, nasality doesn't actually sound all that bad if you're not using a lot of air. Think Stevie Wonder. That is a super, super, super bright vowel. That's what that is. Like metal, wah, like that kind of thing. But even in this one phrase, yes, it starts piercing, but she doesn't finish it piercing. Right? Because she's phrasing. And this is the thing that just boggles my freaking mind. It's like, it's not just that she can do it. She makes music with it, right? I got chills. It's not fair, but at the same time, it's kind of amazing, awesome, so I don't even care that it's not fair. I don't know. This is nuts. You see, she's tapering the phrase off by changing the vowels. This is singing 101 applied to some of the most absurdly difficult technical stuff ever to be pulled off. It's ridiculous. There's no explanation for it. Science can't explain it. It's a phenomena. We're trying. But we don't have the answers. I don't care how many people say it's flagellute. Like, putting a German word as if that explains it. Oh, you don't know what the will... Well, it's a flagellute. Thanks, I get it now. Let's get Dr. K's in here. This is actually really, really, really difficult to do, whistle register aside. Having closure of the vocal folds is more complicated than I think people give it legitimate. So if I do this, let's get a note here. Okay, that right there, I'll zoom in a little bit. There's an airiness to it. You can tell because there's these little like fuzzy parts in between, right? A little bit more, come on. There we go. So you can see between the third line and the fourth line, there's that little fuzzy bit. That's air escaping. So mixed voice can, I guess you could call it that, right? There's some falsetto to it, as in there's some disconnect between the folds and air is leaking. Most people, as they ascend, have this problem, particularly men who like to sound big and loud, which is funny because the inverse tends to happen when you try to be loud. So this air leaking is that airy texture that we hear when Mariah sings. And this is one way to hit high note or go higher. But if you are very good, you can create full vocal closure as you ascend pretty high up. Like tenors in opera can hit high C, not all the time. Some people can. They can do high C, not mixed. That isn't accomplished by shoving your stuff together or anything like that. It's accomplished with breath and vowels. So it's hard to do with anything, particularly as you go high. So when we hear her do this on whistle notes, that is awesome. So there's not much air leaking. You can hear a little bit of it. That hiss, that sound is air leaking. But what's cool is that she's adjusted the vowel. So the lips, I can just hear it. The lips are softer, and the soft palate is kind of domed a little bit to get that like really silky texture. It's interesting. That tone is the result of a high larynx and bright vowel. This is everything that she can do in other parts of her range. It seems like she can do that in whistle. So the reason why so yes, this is pianissimo, agreed. But that vibrato that you hear there, the vibrato that you hear in there is, again, the thyroid tilt, which inherently makes it louder. The reason why that happens is that the thyroid tilt, the thyroid cartilage and the arytenoids, which hold the back of the vocal folds, right? They're level. When you tilt the thyroid cartilage, the distance between the arytenoids and the insertion of the vocal folds in the thyroid cartilage, like a stretch out. So simply put, like a rubber band, when you tug on it, you know, you can bounce. It has more pressure. It's not as lax, right? And because of that tautness, more air pressure builds up before the folds open up and oscillate. This is how you make sound with the voice, is the folds do this, and they move around in cycles. Like A440, there's 440 cycles a second, right? So when you stretch out the folds like that, more pressure builds up. So it is even more impressive that she can use a thyroid tilt. And again, just the way you know it's a thyroid tilt is if there is vibrato. There are some tricks you can do that are not that simple. But for the most part, thyroid tilt equals vibrato. It warms up the tone. That's true. But the dynamic, the volume in general, the sound pressure level, if you will, increases when you tilt the thyroid cartilage. So that she can have this much control of her dynamics gives me indigestion, clearly. I don't know if I'd call that. Dynamics are relative. One of my favorite conductors, Yannick Nézet-Séguin, he's Canadian, is always like, he always said, it's all relative, right? The reason I point that out is because, like range happening on a continuum, dynamics also happen on a continuum and will be different in different situations. So I think that by strictly categorizing dynamics, we actually lessen how impressive she is, because she has that dial on it, which is crazy. One of the ways we increase volume when we sing is we just add more frequencies. There are other tricks you can do, like I talked about the thyroid cartilage tilt, and there's some others, the cricoid cartilage. So you can see this here. All right, if I don't do anything and I just use a straight up vowel, very quiet, clearly. Now I'm going to add thyroid tilt. And you can see the lines are brighter. In this graph, that means they're louder. So clearly more volume here, but now I'm going to add aryepiglottic sphincter, which is squealo, aka the thing that allows singers to be heard over an orchestra. And that is obnoxious up close. I know that's not a pleasant sound, but you can see that build up in frequency right around between the 2K and 3K hertz mark, right? So, and then belting actually looks really cool. Belting is freaking awesome. Sounds a little bit less full is because you can see actually there's a ton of separation. Like when the thyroid tilt was happening and when all that opera stuff was happening, there's a lot of frequencies in the lower end, right? A bunch of different ones. But when you belt, each one is just stacked up on top of each other and bright, 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 loud, 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 loud. So that is what makes belt so powerful, okay? Now, why am I talking about any of this on a whistle video? Because you can do all of this while whistling, and she can do it. And it's demented. What? Hey, Mariah, we got the flute player you wanted. You want me to send him in? No. No. Fire the flute player. I don't like them. I don't like the cut of their jib. I got this. Wait, you got the flute part? Yes, I do. Now get that B word out of here. Wow. Yeah, that is very much like a guitar solo. And this is like... most people's whistle, like things they can do with whistle, it's like a radish. You know, you got like one thing going on. Maybe there's a little layer of skin and they can do other things, but Mariah's whistle is like an onion. Many, many layers. And it makes people cry. I'm sorry, that ain't no piccolo. Piccolos are obnoxious. Ooh, piccolos are not that clean or warm. I don't know enough about the singers who go for whistles to dispute this. All I can say is that the reason her endurance is so good and impressive is because of how consistent her technique is. Even when she gets older, honestly, the only reason Mariah struggles as she ages is because she's singing stuff that she was singing when she was 20. No one does that. So for example, in the opera world, it is expected that about every decade, your voice has matured to the point where you should change your repertoire. You should change what you sing. Everybody, there's a great example of the woman. If you type in like Queen of the Night, and you look at Diana Damrau, and that's a big example of someone who was doing high register stuff. And then you look at Le Comte de Ris, where she's doing more heavy singing after the birth of her child. And she would never be expected to go and sing Queen of the Night ever again. Never, right? So that Mariah still sings her old repertoire is madness. That she can do it at all is crazy. And she does it. She doesn't have to do it. Mariah is rich. Like, she's got FU money, okay? So she doesn't have to do any of that, but she does it for her fans. And it bugs the crud out of me when people are like, oh, she messed up. I'm like, she just hit F6, 7 stratosphere note doom death thingy, and you're going to complain. That's just pretty. That sounds beautiful. I mean, isn't that just lovely? Isn't that just amazing? It just sounds so good. This is also something, I know this is a video about whistle, but she's such a good recording artist. The amount of textures that she is able to get with her, like, she inspires the crud out of me. I initially, when I wanted to do recordings, I was like working on my piano skills, I was working on my beatboxing, because I wanted to do everything MIDI. But when I listened to Mariah and what she does with her voice, it's like she has this orchestra in her mouth hole. She is using breathiness and overdubs. So overdubs is multiple recordings of her voice. And it gives this ethereal thing, right? There's so much breathiness going on. And it actually helps the whistle to stick out. Because when you do breathiness, let's go back to our handy dandy graph. When you do straight up breathiness, you see how all of the higher frequencies are basically gone? Right? You can see in the first one is probably the most example of higher frequencies, right? So contrary to what you might think, when you have a lot of breathiness going on, you're actually making room for higher frequencies because you're not occupying higher frequencies when you sing in a breathy manner. So that means this whistle doesn't need that choir that's breathy all there doesn't need to be like EQ'd a lot, doesn't need to be done with a lot of levels. And the reason why that's impressive is because it's an arrangement thing. When you are making a recording, if the arrangement is not thoughtful of this exact concept, you're going to have a nightmare. Like panning, EQing, there's almost nothing you can do. So that's how smart she is as a recording artist. And it's incredible. This is not hard to do. I'm not talking about the whistle. Obviously, that's really difficult. But many overdubs of breathy singing is not a technically difficult thing to pull off. But artistically, and to even think of that, is so cool. And she does this stuff all the time in her recordings. It's incredible. The amount of texture she can get with her voice. And when she does overdubs, when she does this choir stuff, she has even more, like, she demonstrates that she can do even more with her voice. Because she'll do stuff with the overdubs that she'll never do when she's doing stuff solo. I think that just sounds good. I think people misrepresent or misunderstand resonance. People often say that, like, I think people are like, here, let's look at the wording specifically that this individual used. Mariah has a ring all the way up to the 7th octave, indicating great freedom and resonance. Usually when people discuss the ring, people reference the ring of the voice, and it usually stems, that terminology usually stems from classical music. And I don't, like, resonance is complicated, okay? All of this stuff right here, all of these different frequencies that I'm showing you when I was doing all this other stuff, that's all resonance. There are many ways to adjust resonance. Vowels, thyroid, cricoid, you know, how you move your lips, what you do with a microphone. So, and I'm not downplaying her ability to have a ring. What I am saying is that Mariah has unbelievable ability to control what resonance she wants in the tone of everything she sings, but in particular the whistle. So this idea that there's a particular vocal resonance, I think, is actually not giving her the credit that she deserves. And you know, it's not, I don't blame anybody. Like, these terms get thrown around all the time and no one ever qualifies them. No one ever actually says what they are, what they mean. Like, what, like, I don't know. I've never seen on YouTube anyone ever use a spectrogram. This is a spectrogram. This literally tells you what frequencies you're singing, right? And there are so many ways to adjust your frequencies in your singing. And it's insane because Mariah has a lot of these abilities to do that stuff. And I would agree that it is a sign of great freedom and exceptional ability. I've never heard anyone come even close to being able to add different kind of textures when whistling. And that's when I hear whistling at all, right? Like, I don't hear a lot of people doing it. So I want to point out, because all these showing all these notes, don't listen for a ring. Listen to how it fits with every song, with everything else in the mix. This gives me chills. This is insanity. No, this is not about ringing. Listen to how the tone quality changes depending on what is going on in the music. That's what makes her amazing. She makes music with this crazy technique. Listen to the tone quality and what's around it. You see how that right there, the A. You see how bright that is? That is an incredibly bright vowel because there are a lot of people singing under her, and it's also bright. So she needs to bring more higher frequencies to cut through the mix. So she does. like every example here, even just the little snippets, these little seconds, are indicative of how much control she has, but also how she uses it. She uses it in a case-by-case scenario in what makes sense musically. That is why she's so good. No one that I have ever heard does that with whistle. I think Ariana Grande is great, okay? And like I said in the beginning of this video, singing technique is not a competition. There's many different ways to sing. But if we're talking about objective ability to make and apply whistle register in your music, I would argue that when I listen to like My Hair, it's not as elegantly put into the mix or applied musically. Like I said, Ariana Grande is amazing. She's a great singer. So I'm not taking shots at her. All I'm saying is that specifically when it comes to whistle, I don't know anybody who can do this. So this is one of those instances where someone takes an idea, a concept, and applies it, applies a foreign language to make it sound more official. Coloratura, if in the Fach system, coloratura is usually going to be the lightest of the Fach. So if you have a soprano, like coloratura, light lyric, whatever. The Fach system is a German convention that was great when you're looking to hire singers in a choir or something like that, or for an opera, where this thing has been written, it's pre-established, yada, yada, yada. The reason why I don't want coloratura used here and why I think it's inaccurate, because what we're actually talking about is her vocal agility. And that's important. When we look at someone like Mariah, who has a 6 whatever octave range, are we really going to say, oh, she's a mezzo? No, she's a soprano. Because she has a microphone, because she can do so much with different weird extended techniques and craziness, it actually if she fit into the soprano or the mezzo category, that would not explain her insane range, right? So you're better off not applying a voice type to Mariah Carey because she can outdo the range, high and low, of mezzo and soprano. So when I say we're not applying the Fach system, what I'm saying is this is not classical music, and the range she is working with defy the Fach system. So you can't use it. It doesn't work. And the word coloratura in the Fach system generally denotes someone with a massive ability to have vocal agility. What is vocal agility? That kind of stuff, right? That's vocal agility. It is technique unto itself. It does not denote a voice type. So that's why I'm being very, very particular of this, okay? Vocal agility is your folds are thin and you're using very little air and you can adjust them very, very, very quickly. That's what agility is. That's, so an arpeggio would be this, right? You'd have, and whatever, if you want to do diminished, that's an arpeggio, right? You take a chord and you break it up melodically. An arpeggio is a chord played melodically, not harmonically. Why am I making this discrepancy? Why am I picking on this thing? The reason I am is because it's actually harder what she's doing than an arpeggio. What she's doing is more difficult. What she's doing is taking a motif, and then she's switching it up octaves. So that's the end of my piano. So like I'm like, so she's doing something actually far more difficult than an arpeggio. This part is nuts. Not this one. That is also nuts, but this. Her ability to sometimes with her, I don't know where whistle starts and head begins. It's so seamless. I completely agree with this. Her ability to descend and ascend with complete and utter grace is mind-boggling. I got nothing. So this is another example of like there's actually more here than is and this is I'm actually not so musically staccato is the right term. I'm not going to pick apart whether it's staccato, marcato, pizzicato, or whatever. That's a string term, but like. So in that very example, she's using several different attacks, right? An attack is the sonically is the initial spike, right? So a piano has high attack and then very low sustain, right? Attack, decay, sustain is how we describe a waveform. And so when we're looking at this, we're looking at the spectrogram. We're actually just going to look at the waveform. So let me just bring that to where it needs to be. Boom. So this yellow thing right here, this like beige yellow thing, that's what we're going to focus on. That's the waveform, okay? So when she's doing this staccato thing, she actually does it multiple ways. There's glottal, ha, 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 which I sound like a goose when I do. But you can see that that's a very abrupt start to the note. So that is a glottal. You're closing your folds, and then you're kind of exhaling, and then they kind of pop open like that. That's a glottal. There's more here, though. So she's also doing what's called an aspirate abrupt. Ha, ha, ha. So that's different than a glottal. It even looks different than a glottal, right? A glottal like kind of closes real quick. What an aspirate abrupt is you're putting a lot of air through open folds, and then they come together very quickly because it is by putting air through the folds that they come together. It's the Bernoulli effect. Usually I have 2 pieces of paper available, and I do. Bam! Bernoulli effect. Let's talk about it. Real simple concept. Yeah. There we go. As I remove the pressure in between the 2 pieces of paper, right? If I push pressure through it, that makes the pressure on the sides, on the outsides of the paper, stronger than the pressure inside the paper. And so what we get is closure. So the reason I bring that up is because this is an aspirate abrupt. This is the concept of an aspirate abrupt. And there's one more thing we've got to talk about, and this is the aspirate gradual, which is where you slowly put enough air to get that vocal closure. Right? So why do I bring this up? I bring this up because she's not just doing it one way. Nope. She's using aspirate abrupt. She's using glottals. Right? You can hear it. ha 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 ha. You can hear the H in the beginning here. That's the H. Right? So yes, that is staccato. But when, in terms of executing it, there's a lot here. And it's, I could literally sit down with this phrase and go note by note and talk about aspirate abrupt, aspirate gradual, glottal, and then how she uses that to create a phrase. Now, it's important to know, because, you know, some people when I break down this stuff is like, does she actually know she's doing it? Probably not, right? Like, I think she's been playing with her voice for a very, very long time, and through play we discover the best practice is play practice. So yeah, she's doing all these things, but I don't think she thinks about it. She's just executing and making marvelous music. But these are the things that she is doing. And these are not easy things to control in one phrase, regardless of whether it's whistle. So then you add the whistle on top, and it's like this bacon McDonald's cheeseburger, and it's like, it's that decadent, and it's that like, ooh, man, am I deserving of all of this bacon? But then you find out it's actually Coke Zero, but tastes like the bacon. So it's like, oh, I get to have this and eat tons of it, and it's delicious. This is a bizarre metaphor. I'm going to stop. Yeah, you can hear the aspirate abrupts, you can hear the glottals. She's crazy. So this is another example of people, I think, misunderstanding language. Melisma. So we already went over this with coloratura. Melisma is like, that's what a melisma is. It's a run. What you would call a run is a melisma, right? A melisma, the term sounds like more official because it's like a classical music term. But if I could destroy all of that, because I think it obfuscates, it makes unclear what it is that people are actually talking about. So, and I don't blame this person. I don't blame the person who edited this video. I'm fighting an uphill battle here. Coloratura and melismas generally refer to the same thing, the ability to use vocal agility. So that goes back to what he called an arpeggio. Like that kind of crazy stuff. I wouldn't call that staccato. On. So, because it's more than just staccato. This goes back to like all of the vocal onsets, the onset being the start of a vocal note. So, it's how she cuts that off that makes it sound like staccato. Her ability to abruptly stop the note. That's very difficult. The reason why it's difficult is because when you're singing high, it's generally very, very, very difficult to not blow open the folds. Like the higher you go, the more thin the folds get, okay? And the thinner the folds get, the more easily they blow open. So we actually covered this in the beginning of the video. If I do this, and you can see the air there. You can see it, the little hiss thing. That little air in between is vocal fold separation. Why does it matter? Why it matters is because look what happens when I try to taper it off or stop the note. You hear how there's a little like that little lurch, and you can actually see it in the wave, not the waveform, the spectrogram. How there's this like dip, this sudden dip. That's what's happening to people who put too much breath pressure behind a note. And again, just to be clear, as this gets, this is only an E, as this gets higher and higher and higher and higher, this is more likely to happen because the folds are more thin, and so stopping them from blowing open is more and more and more difficult. So when we see this, you see how clean those stops are? And then the beginning of the note is also clean. That's madness. That's madness. So staccato is not a technique. You use techniques to perform staccato, but it's a musical aesthetic. What? Wow. There's a lot going on there. Yeah, it's not just one thing. That's where I think if we call it staccato, we lose the techniques that she is using to pull off the musical aesthetic. I know I sound like a hyper anal retentive voice teacher, but I am. So I'm just going to be one. So again, this goes back to like abrupts, graduals, et cetera, and how she uses those techniques in a register that no one understands other than how the vocal folds look when it happens. And she's using these techniques to create the aesthetic that is staccato, right? The musical idea. Those are aspirate abrupts, right? Ha 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 ha, right? Those are abrupts. Like, I don't. Oh man. You know, one of these days, we're gonna be able to find out how to observe the larynx during whistle register. One of these days, we're gonna find out how to do it, and I hope Mariah is alive and well when we figure out how to do that, because I would love to watch like a 3-hour-long video of just her folds and her larynx getting recorded and scoped and just listening to this stuff. It is so bizarre that she can apply all of these things that are difficult enough to do when you're not in this unknown Bermuda triangle of the human voice. And then she can do it really comfortably. It's crazy. I actually don't agree with this. Or I actually don't disagree with this. I think this is correct. I agree with this. It's what I said before. I don't know anybody who does it to great musical effect at all times. I actually think that's a fair statement. God rest ye merry gentlemen. I know this is a video about whistles, but I can't help but point out how amazing as a vocal artist she is. She has delay on one of these voices. God rest ye merry gentlemen. So delay is different from reverb. Delay is a repetition of the note, so that it's just like ha 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 ha, and then it'll weaken over time. Whereas reverberation is constant reflections. So it's not just a reiteration; it's just kind of a reflection, and that gets way more complicated. And modeling reverb is a whole science in and of itself. But with delay, there's ways to use reverb for mixing, but there's ways to use delay for musical effect. Oh boy, There's so much going on that she's with the delay and the overdubs. She's just such an intelligent musician. When using delay, you'll see guitar players do this. Well, the ones who like to use very long guitar necks to establish their masculinity. People will use delay pedals and play in canon with themselves. So like, row, row, row your boat, row, right? You know what I mean? That sort of thing. That's playing in canon with yourself. And she's doing some of that. It's not as obvious though. She's not broadcasting it, but you can hear it in the mix. It's extraordinary. And she's just so good at this stuff. None of this is conceptually difficult. Of the things that we have talked about musically, how she goes about being a recording artist, this is not conceptually difficult, but it is difficult. The idea is not complicated, but the execution is difficult. Because to make delay work like this, every single overdub has to be spot on. And if you've ever tried to record something and you don't regularly practice with a metronome, you know how hard it is to be right on the money every time. You know it. It's so hard. Because every little millisecond deviation from an overdub muddies the mix and is apparent. I agree with this. It's used as like this is again, just her arrangements are really, really great. It's like a flute, it's like a piccolo, or like a really high string, like when you just kind of blend it in there. And her phrasing of that note is gorgeous. It's got an arc, it's got a journey of itself. It's not just a note. Yeah, that's amazing. No disagreement there. That's amazing. There are not many artists that I cover on this channel that I go then and listen to in my spare time, primarily because I can't stop. Like if I hear stuff like this, I can't stop thinking about it. You know what I mean? I can't consume it passively. But there are moments that I'll go and listen to from Mariah, because just like when I listen like Dark Side of the Moon or like all of these old school albums where you kind of pick up on new things kind of every listen. I feel that way about the Grace album. I feel kind of Blue is like that. There's so many of these little nuggets in her recordings. Even the way the voices are panned. It's crazy. That's interesting. This is kind of like... So when people point out Mariah is like struggling, they'll look to kind of like dirty singing like this. I don't think this is that bad. I wouldn't call that bad technique. I'd call that reckless abandon. I mean, you're gonna, and that's common in gospel. I just want to repeat, that is not an arpeggio. That is a sequence. Right? Like dum da da. The switch between belt and whistle is demented. Okay, I don't need the spectrogram for this one, luckily. Sorry, everybody, but when you tilt your cricoid cartilage, which is one of the two ways we think belting works, but for now, let's say belting is cricoid cartilage tilt, right? At the base of your larynx, the idea is that this thing tilts. And by it tilting, it makes the folds fatter. The other theory is that the thyroid cartilage goes backwards, which would accomplish the same thing, fatter folds, okay? You can't whistle with fat folds. It doesn't work. Because to whistle, you need like that sort of like little hole that you would have when you, right? That little hole needs to be there during whistle. And if you fatten your folds, you won't get there. So her ability to use the cricoid tilt and immediately let go of it to go and use a completely dramatically different technique is demented. Belt. And again, this is not just one whistle sequence thing that goes up. The sequence by itself is impressive. But you hear how it's aspirate gradual now? Aspirate gradual, aspirate gradual, aspirate gradual, boom! Aspirate abrupt. She's phrasing. She's being a musician. Yeah! I feel like I won something, but I don't even know what I won. That's not the whistle, that's a siren on my block. I don't know if I would say that. Sure, I just don't think this is an all the time thing, though I don't think that that's what this individual is saying. She will layer with whistle for multiple reasons, and it's amazing and stunning. So, you know, whether you want to call it heightened emotional, whatever, it's stunning. So yeah, agreed. To me, this like adds a level of vulnerability. It's exactly like when you listen to like a really good sonata, a violin piece, usually with piano. When they go up, that's the hardest thing to do on violin, is to get that gentle high note, because it's so, if you don't have it just right with the bow on a violin, it sounds so egregious and painful. So a very, very sleek, sexy high note on a violin is not easy at all. And I would say that that's a great parallel for whistle, right? Whistle, to make it beautiful and soft, is not common. We don't hear that often. So this is a phenomenal video. This is what's so cool about her fan base, is that they go at great lengths to learn about music, to learn about the human voice, because they are in awe of a spectacular artist. And they're so in awe of her that they want to feel closer to the music by understanding more about music. If I didn't have a degree and I didn't study opera for 14 years, I would not have been anywhere near as pretentious and ridiculous as I am, and very particular about terminology. So I hope no one holds that against me. I acknowledge I'm being inattentive, but this is so much effort into this video. It's excellent. Thank you for the recommendation, folks.